Tucked within the lively framework of Lapu-Lapu City in the Philippines exists a tranquil village called Mactan, a haven from the city's bustling pace. This modest sanctuary was the unassuming place Christine Lee Siloans called home. On March 9th, 2019, the 16-year-old arranged to meet a love interest, unaware of the tragedy that loomed ahead. The calm was shattered the following day when Christine's lifeless and disfigured body was found after undergoing a truly horrifying act of violence. The crime was so severe it caused a national outrage and calls for the death penalty to be reinstated. What happened to Christine that night was truly horrific, and even though the legal system has declared this a closed case, there remains a sense of unease and dissatisfaction within the community. Many people believe that true justice is unfulfilled and that the perpetrators remain free. But before we dive in, I want to let you know that I make videos weekly. So if you want to see my next one, please drop this video a like and subscribe if you are new. It really helps me out. Thank you. Christine Lee Siloan was one of the students at Maribago National High School, and similar to other young people today, she loved the K-pop band BTS and enjoyed watching animes. She also volunteered at her local church, the Sacred Heart Parish. Every Sunday, she worked as a collector for them, leaving her home at 4 p.m. each Sunday to fulfill her role, and she would return after the service was over. One Sunday, however, deviated from the routine, as Christine didn't return home by 7 p.m. on March 9th, 2019. This unexpected deviation filled her mother, Lourdes Siloan, with concern. This was out of character for her. Her family soon alerted the Philippine National Police, known as the PNP, and the search for Christine began. In the early morning light, Lourdes embarked on the desperate search for her missing daughter. Her first destination was the Sacred Heart Parish, the last known location where Christine had been seen. Poring over the church's logbook, Lourdes found confirmation of her daughter's attendance and duties the previous evening. She had indeed arrived, changed the offering at Mass, and completed her collection. Conversations with the churchgoers who had last seen Christine led to a chilling revelation. Witnesses attested to seeing Christine in the company of 3 unfamiliar men, deepening the shroud of mystery surrounding her disappearance. That same morning, the grim discovery of a partially clothed body of a young female was made in an empty field nearby Christine's home. The peaceful community was now grappling with a nightmare that was all too real. The gruesome scene presented a young woman with almost no clothing on her from the waist down, her pants having been lowered. She had been mutilated, and clearly half her face was missing, exposing the skull beneath. The sight was so distressing that none of the local residents could identify the victim. Reacting quickly, they notified the police. Upon arrival, the investigators were instantly struck by the victim's visible stab wounds, a grim sign of the extreme violence that had been inflicted upon her. Her body was transported for a more detailed examination, which revealed shocking levels of violence. Half of the victim's face had been partially dissolved by acid and meticulously stripped away with a precise tool. The medical examiner ruled out the possibility of an animal attack, citing the unnaturally clean cut and absence of any bite marks on the body. The assault escalated to further horrifying extremes, as it was discovered that the perpetrator had removed the victim's trachea, esophagus, part of her neck and her tongue. The forensic team also confirmed that Christine was not forced upon, like it was initially believed. This was something the general public opposed. The examiner suggested two possibilities for such a monstrous act. Either it was ritualistic, or the perpetrator was under the influence of some mind-altering substances and was in a fit of rage. The removal of body parts was believed to be an attempt to hamper the identification of the body. The chilling confirmation arrived soon after, when a family member heartbreakingly recognized the remains. The body was indeed that of Christine. The appalling news sent shockwaves not just through Macton, but resonated on a national level. The heinous nature of the crime left the country reeling, the collective conscience crying out for answers. In response, the government issued a 2 million peso reward for information leading to an arrest. The public outcry was so intense that it prompted the National Bureau of Investigation, known as the NBI, to work on the case, bolstering the efforts of the local authorities. A cry for justice echoed throughout the nation. To many, the sequence of events was tragically clear. Christine had been forced upon, murdered, and callously discarded. As the NBI brought their resources to bear, they found CCTV footage that tracked Christine's movements, and soon after, the manhunt began. With this new evidence, the authorities announced that they were in pursuit of potentially 3 male assailants, the same individuals reportedly seen in Christine's company on that fateful Sunday. This was the last known footage of her alive. According to the authorities, Christine was murdered between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. on March 10th, 2019. The police investigation led to a suspect named Jonas Martel Bueno. He was initially apprehended in connection with the murder of a 62-year-old farmer in Danao City, Cebu. Although he denied any involvement in Christine's case, his name was drawn into the spotlight due to the striking similarities between the modus operandi in both killings. Bueno was partly implicated in the brutal murder and skinning of the elderly male. However, when authorities finally tracked him down, he was living under an alias on an entirely different island. Bueno confessed to the murder of the farmer, but remained adamant that he was not connected to Christine's case. He cited an alibi of conflicting timelines, which, surprisingly, turned out to be accurate. His alibi was later verified by his employer, who confirmed that Bueno was at a job site on the day that Christine was tragically murdered. The case took a controversial turn with the introduction of the second suspect, a teenager named John, believed to have been identified in the CCTV footage. John was known to have had a romantic history with Christine. The pair had allegedly broken up just days before the incident. His identity has been hidden for legal reasons. The NBI stated that John confessed to committing the horrific crime, driven by intense jealousy. He even admitted to having accomplices. CCTV footage shows Christine with a man, and in one particular frame, she is seen to be in a dispute with him. The NBI confirmed that based on their analysis, the man in the frame was Christine's ex-boyfriend, John. A search warrant led authorities to John's residence, where they confiscated his mobile phone and other items that could potentially link him to Christine's murder. Examination of the text message exchanges reveals plans to meet after the Mass that Sunday. The NBI alleged that John had used a fabricated Facebook profile to lure Christine into meeting him that evening. They further claim that John confessed to discarding the murder weapon, a set of knives. Despite the mounting evidence, the case was far from clear-cut. John's family strongly maintained his innocence, stating that they could present 9 individuals who could vouch for his presence elsewhere at the time of the crime. Their pleas, however, fell on deaf ears, as the NBI remained resolute, basing their case on the evidence gathered. John was subjected to a psychological evaluation, which, according to the NBI, proved that he was aware of his actions at the time of Christine's murder. In response, John's family hired the services of a lawyer, Vincent Israel. On March 21st, Vincent filed a motion for John's release, arguing that the NBI lacked legal grounds for the arrest. He claimed that the confession seemed fabricated, even insinuating potential evidence planting by the NBI. The lawyer challenged the authorities to conclusively prove that the man captured in the CCTV footage with Christine was indeed his client, John. The prosecutor's office expressed disappointment over the NBI's handling of the case, criticising the arrest of John without substantial evidence. Meanwhile, the simultaneous investigations conducted by the NBI and the local police led to contrasting outcomes. John's family was relieved at his release, but the sorrowful family of Christine was left mourning their loss. 4 days after Christine was laid to rest, the President of the Philippines requested that John was rearrested. However, his attorney swiftly intervened, stating that according to the documents, the release could not be revoked. On April 2nd, 2019, a second autopsy was conducted on Christine's body. The medical examiner, contracted by the public attorney's office, confirmed that the young girl had in fact been forced upon, contrary to the previous autopsy. This was based on bleeding that was found inside her genitals. He concurred with the initial autopsy that half of Christine's face had been disfigured with acid, along with over 20 stab wounds. The examiner also verified that the victim had been strangled with a rope. The physician summarized that 2 perpetrators could have been involved in this horrific crime. This diverging set of results further highlighted the contrasting approaches different governmental branches took in handling the investigation. The discrepancies left a cloud of uncertainty hanging over the case. In a sudden twist, a month after John's arrest, 43-year-old Renato Yanez was detained for an unrelated charge. However, while in custody, he startled the police with an unexpected confession. Yanez revealed that guilt had led him to confess, asserting that he was the actual perpetrator of the crime and that he was motivated by his substance addiction. He declared that John was wrongfully accused. Yanez, a father of 5 children living with his partner, confessed to having known the victim. He used a fake profile on Facebook named CJ Diaz, whom he referred to as a chat boy. Through this, CJ and Christine became acquainted, and their relationship developed over a few months. Yanez admitted to having been in and out of prison due to substance offences. He said that he texted Christine at 6 p.m. whilst she was outside the church. He approached her, asking her to accompany him, but she had refused, stating that she was there to meet someone else. He confessed to Christine that he was in fact CJ Diaz. Christine was taken aback, since he did not resemble the man in the Facebook profile picture he had used. Yanez was much older. Christine began to walk away, but Yanez followed her to a dark, secluded spot known as the Sitio. Yanez was walking beside her, using his phone's torch to light the way. Yanez admitted that he asked Christine to have intimate relations with him, but she refused. He didn't like Christine's answer, so he slapped her twice. Christine then admitted that she was no longer a virgin, and this really angered Yanez. He punched her repeatedly, but because it was so noisy to muffle her screams, he revealed that he stabbed her until she fell to the ground. He then attempted to remove her shorts, but stopped when her body became unresponsive. In this final gruesome act, he confessed to skinning Christine's face to prevent anyone from identifying her. Yanez declared that he had acted alone, asserting that John was uninvolved and should be deemed innocent. But by then, the authorities didn't seem particularly interested in John anyway. Despite some discrepancies, notably Yanez's denial of forcing himself on Christine, the case was legally closed. On April 7th, the police recommended charging Yanez with murder. However, on the morning of May 25th, 2020, Yanez was found dead in his jail cell. Initial reports suggested he ended things himself, leading to swirling speculation. Some even believed that Yanez may have been killed by fellow inmates, as he was incarcerated in the same prison where Christine's uncle was also detained. Following threats to his life, he had been transferred to the infirmary, where he was discovered dead. Reportedly, he fashioned a rope from some cloves. The death of Yanez effectively closed the case. However, it left Christine's family with a deep sense of injustice. Christine's mother, Lourdes, said that she would not sign the affidavit unless her daughter's ex-boyfriend would be included in the complaint. She couldn't agree to the conditions set because the police lacked the evidence against John. She fully believed that John also had a hand in her daughter's brutal murder. John's lawyer said, "I respect Mrs. Siloan's refusal to sign the complaint affidavit unless my client is included in the case. But I hope that she would realise that by her refusal, she was refusing justice for her daughter. It is unfortunate that everyone, including my client, is wishing for justice for Christine, yet her mother refuses the very justice our community wants to obtain. It's impossible to truly grasp the depth of grief that Christine's mother and her family must be going through. This is indeed a truly harrowing case." That's the end of this episode. Until next time, stay sane.